Sam, so we were recently talking about this idea of where does somebody even start when they're approaching how to like train a role in a business, or if it's at a restaurant, like a station, when it comes to station training. And I think this is such a such a basic question. It's kind of the question, right? Like how to decode the scope of how to train a role, and even where to start, how much to do, how to lay that out. And I appreciated what you were talking about with this recent training that you helped facilitate. Why don't you just lay this out for us? Tell us a little bit about what you were telling me.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was talking to people that were creating training for mortgage loan officers, and
Okay.
to help them figure it out, I talked about helping people build burritos and training how to build a burrito, which is an interesting parallel. The fact that you approach it the same way, but I think it helped illustrate it a little bit. But what they were trying to solve was they've got this new role, these mortgage loan officers that they're trying to train, and they're like, we have all this stuff. We've got all of the materials in the world of what to train. We have all these decks, all these presentations that we've got, and we need to train them coming in. We want to build a program. We want to build a course. Where do we even start? Like, how do we figure this out? Which I feel like is the same problem most people face in the industry, is like there's a ton of opinions and a ton
Yeah.
of ideas of what to train. And so it was interesting. Where we started was I started first by talking about defining what success is for the role, which could be different at different times. Like if it's a brand new person, in this case, these people know nothing about mortgages. And I'm like, okay, so what does success look like and how long are you willing to give somebody to achieve success? So what's the time frame and what's the definition? And so in this case, they're like, hey, in 6 months, we know that they should be here, that they could deliver this well in 6 months. I was like, okay, so you have 6 months to get them there. That's the end point. And now we're at the beginning of building training. Somewhere in there is your answer. And so we've at least defined the start point and the end point, and we know what success looks like. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's interesting because we often forget that, like we jump into training. But really, like figuring out what success looks like is step one for everybody, and getting alignment around that. We've spent lifetimes trying to get alignment on what success looks like. I feel like that's the hardest part for anybody, is getting
Mhm.
all leaders to align on this is what success looks like in this role.
Yeah. I, so you mentioned relating it to a burrito, rolling a burrito. So it's almost like starting with like success. If your job is rolling a burrito or creating a wrap, um, success is being able to roll the burrito so that stuff doesn't fall out and it closes.
Well, that's right. Like it's almost easier with a burrito, where you know that like it's got to be tightly wrapped. The stuff
Yeah.
shouldn't be falling out. There shouldn't be strands of lettuce coming out the side. Juice shouldn't be flowing out. Like it should be tightly wrapped. The foil, in our case, the foil should be like really tightly wrapped so you can tear it easily around it. So success was like the final package.
Yeah.
But to do that, like you get some wonky burritos thrown at you when you're on the line of like extra guacamole, hot sauce, sour cream. Sofritas were like the wettest thing ever. Like there's nothing stable in that
Triple
burrito.
triple rice.
Yeah, it's like a wet burrito is the hardest thing to roll. And so like what I talked through is like, okay, you know what success looks like. In our case, it was like a beautiful burrito, tightly packaged, nice and clean. But you don't start somebody in training, if you're in their case, this like 6 month window, you don't start them with the hardest thing possible. Like, let me teach you how to get there with the wet burrito with extra sour cream and hot sauce all over the place and only guacamole in it, because that's the hardest thing. That's the last thing. So I started by like, okay, in mortgages, what's the most complicated mortgage you could ever imagine this person having to process? That's your end point. That's the last thing you teach them. And all we do is start with like, what's the simplest version of that mortgage? And then build your way up, slowly layer in more and more. And if you think about it like a burrito, you start with like just rice and chicken and roll that burrito. Simplest thing ever. And then
Yep.
layer on some beans. It's a little bit wetter, a little squishier. Now roll that burrito. Now layer on some corn, some lettuce, and now roll that burrito until eventually you get to the crazy variations but you start at the beginning and then work your way there, so that by the time you get to the end, when you're working on the most difficult tasks, you've had repetitions doing the simple things or the easier things over and over again, and you're not thinking about those anymore. Now those are easy, which allows you to focus on the hard stuff in order to meet the expectation and deliver the product well in the end.
I like that example. And for for anybody who's listening, like that is literally what was like in the training book at Chipotle on like how to roll a burrito. It was like put some rice in it, put some chicken in it, and roll just that. Try it with just that first until you can get
Totally.
that perfect. Um,
I learned on
yeah,
a towel. My guy threw Caesar. I still remember Caesar. I was not good. So maybe this was at like, you can't even handle rice and chicken. Caesar at my restaurant put a towel in a burrito and it was like, you just roll the same tortilla over and over again until you figure it out. And then we'll give you some food, but I'm not wasting my food on you.
that's great. Roll this towel inside of this burrito. That's like level zero. That's
Level zero.
pre burrito rolling.
That's
Um,
right. But I feel like for everybody, like the lesson in the end is like you're dealt all of this stuff and it's really hard to sift through it. But in the end, like you figure out what success looks like, you figure out the most complicated version of that, you start at the simplest version and just build up to that. And anything that doesn't make sense in there, you strip away. And all of that is the noise of people trying to add stuff in. But if it's not helping you achieve that, whatever the final agreed upon goal is, you get rid of it. And then what's left, you just layer on from the simplest to the most difficult until you can achieve the expectation.
I like that. That's simple. Well said.
That is simple.
Nice. Thanks, Sam.
And if all else fails, just throw a towel in a burrito and fold
Just
it,
throw a towel in the burrito or your mortgage.
or your mortgage.
Until next time.
Until next time.